Welcome, formal welcome to Think Different. This is our Tanya class, and tonight we have a very special session, very special, joyous session, because we are starting chapter 50. Clean start, chapter 50 out of 53 of the chapters of Tanya. I want to give an introduction to kind of set the tone, set the stage for what we are about to jump into tonight. As you probably know, over the last several chapters, the Alter Rebbe has been discussing the attributes, the emotions of love and awe. Let's focus on love for a moment, or also awe, and then we'll focus on love. But let's speak generally, and then we'll focus on love, and then we'll get into tonight's discussion. So the reason that we're focusing on emotions is because it's one thing, maybe the most critical thing, is to do what we must, right? God put us here on this planet. God gave us a mission. God entrusts us with a purpose. And the greatest thing we can do is achieve our mission, is get the job done. So that's without a doubt, task number one is getting the task done, right? Rule number one is getting the job done. But along with that, the idea in Tanya is that when we're infused with emotion, it lifts our actions and it allows it to soar to the greatest of heights. So action, doing what we need to do, is at the core of our work, of our life's mission. But when we do the work, the core work, with love, with a sense of reverence, it just lifts up the experience. Imagine, if you will, imagine if you walk into an office space, or you walk into, I have a good example. You know Trader Joe's? You guys know Trader Joe's? Yeah. There's one thing about Trader Joe's. I don't know how they do this or how it happens, but I haven't been, honestly, I'll full disclosure, I have not been in Trader Joe's in a little while. It's been a little bit. I don't know, every time I go there, there's like a line around the block. At least the one I'm in row, it's like around on the sidewalk and around, and I'm like, I'm gonna make another plan. But nonetheless, every time I've walked in there previously, so the people that work there are really happy. You ever notice that? Just super cheerful and upbeat. In many stores you walk into, you can't find someone to help you. You look around, it's like, man, I need to buy cornflake crumbs for something. And I'm just letting you know what I can never find and I know they carry it because I bought it there before, but I go to the cereal section, cornflakes, yes, cornflake crumbs, that's like the little, like almost like breadcrumb version of cornflakes. I know, by the way, the name of this Zoom meeting is Cooking with Rabbi Ari. So I feel like I'm allowed to share some culinary conversation. And I know what you're thinking. Why don't you just buy the cornflakes, put it in a bag, and smash it and make cornflake crumbs? Like, what's the issue? I know. I know that can be done. I still want to buy the cornflake crumbs, and I can never find it. But moreover, I can never find someone that can help me find it. But when you go into Trader Joe's, by contrast, you go into Trader Joe's, and I'm not calling out any grocery store, and it's not about calling out. I'm trying to draw a contrast. You walk into Trader Joe's, whoa, they're there. Can I help you? They're like high-fiving each other. They ring a bell. I don't even know why. 3 bells, 1 bell, 2 bells. Who knows why? I don't know. It's a party in aisle 4. I don't know what's going on, but it's upbeat. And you know what? It's actually a nice place to shop. Again, for me, when there's a line around the block, a little bit more hesitant, not just only because, waiting, but look, the bottom line is when you walk into an environment where people are not just doing the work, but they're doing the work with a love, with a passion, it's a different experience. The Alter Rebbe says there's 2 ways to serve God. You can do the work, which is the most important thing. Obviously, get the work done, make the world a beautiful place. That's the main thing. Tend to God's garden. Yeah, that's the main thing. But if you do it with joy, if you do it with reverence, you do it with kavanah, with intentionality, it's an even more beautiful experience, right? Think about it. You could do the job or do it with a smile, do it with a passion. That's a profound experience. So the Alter Rebbe is encouraging us The Alter Rebbe is encouraging us to not just do the work, to not just get the job done, but to do that with energy, with vibrancy, with a verve. Is verve a thing? I think it's a thing. Yeah. Hey, Jody, welcome. So it's all about finding ways to stir our emotions. And that's what we've been talking about the last several chapters in Tanya. Now, when it comes to love, for example, that's going to be our focus tonight. The main focus tonight is on love, right? So when it comes to love, the Alter Rebbe says, and this is from Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, that there are multiple dimensions of love. And each one can be sort of conceived of with a physical analogy. So for example, there's love that is comparable to water. Water love. I'm not referring to people that love kayaking. That's something else. This is love that's like water, not the love of water, right? We can do laps in the pool later, right? This is love that is like water. By contrast, there's love that's like fire. There's water love and fire love. And by the way, the water love is not love that's been doused with cold water. No, water love is passionate love. Water love is still passionate, but it's different than fire love. What's the difference? We're going to get to it. I want to give you another way of imagining different types of love. This is going to require a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit, not a stretch, but a little bit more subtlety, perhaps. There's what we call silver love and gold love. There's again, not the love of silver or the love of gold, right? But there's love that's like silver, kesef in Hebrew. Kesef is silver. And then love, kesef also means money colloquially, but it literally means silver. And then there's love that's like gold. Love that is comparable to gold, which is zahav. So there's kesef love, silver love, and zahav love, gold love. What does that mean? We're going to get to the water, to the fire, to the silver, to the gold. We're going to get there. If this were written in modern times, we would have silver love, gold love, and maybe even Bitcoin love. Anyway, but it is what it is. You know, this was written a little bit back in the day. Got to go with the crypto joke at least once a session. All right, back to our story. So what is water love and what is fire love? So to understand why love would be called water or fire in the first place, we need to understand what is the nature of water and what is the nature of fire. How do they differ from each other, right? What's water, what's fire, and what's the difference? This is a theme that I've taught many times, and maybe you've learned and you've studied also many times. But we're going to do it again tonight and then connect it back with love. So water seeks so water seeks what's the word I'm looking for? It wants to settle down. It wants to settle. That's what water does. It likes to gather, it likes to settle, and it gets comfortable. It's kind of like when you're, finding a place to sit down and get comfortable, and you settle into your cozy chair and you sit down, but then after you sit down, you like lean back. You know what I'm talking about? There's like the initial approach, and then there's like you're in your comfortable, like you sink fully in. That's what water loves to do. Water loves not just to go, to rest gently, but it loves to seep and saturate. It loves to really just settle in. That's what water does. Water settles in, settles down. What about fire? Couldn't be any more different. Water, nice. Fire is the exact opposite. Fire goes up and fire is uncomfortable. Fire is unsettled. Fire is very anxious and I'm trying to think of a good way to if fire had a personality, we would say very volatile. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. Volatile, very anxious, very not settled. Water is very settled, very down to earth. It's collecting, it's settling. Fire is the opposite. So let me give you an example of two forms of love, two types of relationships. There's a relationship between two people that have perhaps known each other for years. And there's a strong love, a strong bond between these two parties. And who could that be?
Hello.
Hello to you, my friend. Come on in. All right, Reva is joining us. Hey, Reeves. Say hi. Nope. Okay. So there's two types. There's two types of love. And let's talk about human relationships now, and we'll see the water and fire applications. So one type of love, imagine a relationship. The parties know each other for years. There's an easiness, or not easiness. There's an ease of the relationship. It's not that a relationship is easy, because every relationship requires work, but there's a familiarity. It's familiar and it's comfortable and it's easy being with that other person. It's just the two parties are in step with each other. And it's not that, again, every relationship has bumps in the road and a relationship has challenges, obviously, but there's a certain comfort and a certain sense of settling, in a good of being settled in that relationship. So there's definitely love. There's 100% there's love, but the love is a water love. It's comfortable. It's not necessarily complacent, but it's settled. It's settled. And then you have another relationship, a relationship that is volatile. Again, not in a negative way, but in a loving way. There's passion and there's fire, and there's a lot of passion. And one might say, well, maybe sometimes the beginning of the relationship is more like the fire. And then as the years go by, maybe it settles into more of a water type of love. And that perhaps could be true. But it's really not, our conversation is really not about human relationships. We're just using that as an analogy and a frame of reference to understand what these themes mean in reference to our relationship, our emotional relationship and connection with God. Because with God as well, there is a water type of love and there is a fire type of love. There's a love that's like water and a love that's like fire. So what is the water love of God? It's a type of love of wanting to connect very deeply, wanting to connect and to be connected with. So a person feels like, I'm a human being, I'm a finite human being, and I want to connect with God. I want to bring heaven down to earth. I want to get a little bit closer to God. I want to do a mitzvah to bridge the gap between infinite and finite, right? If men are from Mars and women are from Venus, well, humans are from, I don't know, humans are creations and God is creator. Humans are finite and God is infinite. Talk about a little bit of a bigger gap between Martians and I don't know what the other one is. Whatever. Mars and Venus are still planets, but us and God, it's completely different realities altogether. It's almost unbridgeable gap. Water love, right? The love of God that's like water is, I recognize the gap and I want to minimize the gap. I want to get closer to God, bring God a little bit more into my life, into the world. I want to bring an awareness of godliness into this world, into my consciousness and into the global consciousness. And how am I going to do that? By prayer. It's a personal way of connecting. Through Torah study, connects with my mind. And of course, doing mitzvot that brings God into the tangible world. So these are different methods, the primary three paths corresponding to right, left, and center. We have mitzvot, Venusian, nice. We have mitzvot on the right, prayer on the left, and mitzvot on the right, prayer on the left, and Torah study in the middle, right, left, center. These are the three vectors, if you will, that connect us with God and kind of fill that desire of that longing for God that we have in the water type of love. So in water love, we sense and appreciate the other, and we want to settle in with them. We want to connect with them and live a harmonious coexistence. Bring God into our lives, becoming part of God's reality, connecting in that way. That's all of that is water love, and there are many different forms, but in general, all puns intended, it's under the umbrella, there you go, of the water type of love. What's the fire love? What is the fire love? It's very different. In fact, it's completely different. You see, water love is I want to be in a relationship with God. I want to be connected with God. I want to feel God in my life. I. Fire love is I no longer want to be. That's different. Fire love is I want, my soul is feeling so close to God that it no longer wants to be a separate entity outside of God with its own identity. Fire love is I want to undo my own existence and merge back into source, to revert back to source as opposed to derivative of source. So water love is I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay where I am, who I am, but I want to be in a relationship with God. I want to bring God into my life, into my reality. And I'm going to go into God's reality also, but we're going to be in a relationship together. It's beautiful. It's so settled, right? It's so nice. Fire love is very different. It's not only about volatility. Fire love is that the meaning of it in Kabbalah is the soul no longer wanting to be. It's the soul no longer wanting to be separate from God. So it's not, my challenge here is that in our terminology, they could sound like the same thing. Well, water love is you want to be in a relationship with God. You want to connect with God. And fire love is you want to connect with God, but it's different. In water love, you want to connect with God, but still remain you. I and God, we should hang out together. I don't want to undo myself. I want to hang out with God. That's water love. Fire love is I no longer want to be, right? Exactly. Thank you, Mark. I want my separateness to dissolve in fire love. It's not like I want to be connected with God, right? I want to be. And as I am, I want to be connected with God. No. I don't want to be. I want to undo this and just merge back into source. Now, in source, will I be me plus source? No, it'll just be source. But that's what I want. So this is radically different. It's also, and this is something that he talks about in chapter 50, we're going to read this inside, it's also dangerous. Proceed with caution, because if the soul gets really carried away, gets really enthralled with this type of love, the danger is it might actually happen. And when it happens, you know what that looks like? It's not life anymore. It's not the life that we know. That's it causes the passing of a human being. This is when we sleep, there's a little bit of merging and connecting, but not fully. Sleep is 1/60th of death. So sleep is a little bit of the soul coming out of its shell, out of the body and connecting. It's more of like, imagine you're in a, I don't know, imagine you're like an underground cave or something, and you're completely like surrounded by the cave, right? But there's a little hole in the top. Once in a while, you peek out over the top and you look around and see what's out there. That's what happens when we sleep, which is why we're able to have a view of perhaps a reality that we don't usually take a glimpse of, even though we're not fully aware of it. But sometimes when we wake up, we'll realize that we saw something or had a premonition or whatever, or something like that when we sleep. But this is talking about, this is what we call kolos hanefesh or kolot hanefesh. This is when the soul jumps out of the body. This is the way the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, the great Or HaChaim, the commentary, the mystical commentary on the Torah, explains what happened with Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron. On the day that the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was inaugurated, the Torah tells us they brought an offering and a fire came down into their nostrils and took their lives, took their souls. What happened? So many different theories. Some say they were intoxicated. Some say they brought an offering they shouldn't. The Ar Chaim and the Rebbe actually supports this idea and explains how this deeper understanding actually is the deeper explanation of intoxication, of this, of that, of the other. Essentially, they had such a deep and powerful yearning for God, not water love, not I want God to come hang out with me in my house. It's I don't want to be anymore. I want to totally undo my own existence to revert back to source. I want to go back to the source code. I don't want to be a manifestation of source. I don't even want to be source. I can't, the language doesn't work. I just want to revert back to source and not the manifestation of source. That's what happened with the sons of Aaron, and their wish was granted and their souls left their body and they undid their own being. Now, whether that's good or not good, we're going to see in today's lesson, that's not the ideal. That's why I said proceed with caution. Fire love, like fire, can burn. Fire is very dangerous. Fire is volatile. Fire love of God can be very dangerous. So in short, we've explained water love and fire love. Water love is a love of contentment, a love of, it's kind of a collected, content, settled, miyushev, misyashev. It's a settled type of love. No one's going anywhere. We're with each other. Fire love is, again, at least in the spiritual context, well, fire is volatile. Fire love in a spiritual context is where a soul wants to undo its own being and go back, undo itself to go back to source. Not because then I'll really be connected with God, but rather because I see a truth and I realize that I no longer want to be outside of source. I want to be part of source. It's a very difficult yearning to explain tangibly to us, for us to really wrap our heads around, because we are so stuck in a model of I and ego that this notion of fire love, which is essentially undoing all of that, sounds so radical and foreign. Like, where would that come from? Why is that a thing? Is that even a good thing? Right? It raises lots of red flags in our ego mind immediately. The moment we hear this idea of yearning to undo oneself, like red flags pop up. Whoa, is this even possible? Is it even kosher? Why would you want that? Who's the you that wants it if you want to not be self? Lots of questions, but this is the core explanation before we jump into the text. Now, I want to mention one more thing and then we're going to jump in. I mentioned before that there's also silver love and gold love. Well, wouldn't you know it, these actually refer to the same two types of love, of water and fire. Silver is water and gold is fire, right? What color is fire? Think about it, right? It's more gold than silver, correct? If you have a silver campfire, that's pretty cool, but then I'm going to doubt it and require some photo or video evidence, right? Fire is typically of a more gold hue. So fire love is gold love, water love is silver love. But let me explain a little bit of the connection there. Silver, kesef, is related to the phrase nichsof, nichsafti. King David writes in Psalms, nichsof, nichsafti, my soul yearns for connection. Again, water love is wanting to connect. Water love, which is now silver love, it's the same thing, like the lower level love, I don't know, lower, higher, whatever. The water love is silver love, which is I want to connect with God. I want a relationship with God. My soul yearns for that closeness. Now, my soul yearns for that closeness means I don't want to disappear. I want to feel God's presence. I, as I am, want to feel God's presence. That's this first level love. The second level of fire love is wanting to not even be. And in that state of not being, guess what? You don't feel close to God because there's no you anymore, right? That's the end game of that second type of love. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Let me just check in. Yeah? There's no me who feels the love. There's just now source, right? That's what we call gold love. Just like gold is radically different and radically more precious than silver, this love is radically of a higher sort than the first love. The first love, as much as we're loving God, we're also loving how God relates to us. In other words, how that would make us feel, how that would make us, transformed or whatever it is, right? It's what it would do for me. So there's still ego, even in that love of God and that desire for connection, there's still ego. In the second form of love, it's radical abandonment of self and radical abandonment of ego. It's a radical form of love. Hence the fire, hence the gold. All right. These are the introductions that I wanted to share. Now it's time. Now it's time to jump inside the text, and I am going to share my screen with you. You can pull it up on your own as well. I linked it in the email that I sent before, but don't worry if you didn't open it, because I am going to share my screen, and I've got it right here for all of us to observe. Okay, here we go. You should be thumbs up if you can see the screen. Yes, it's showing up. Yeah, beautiful. All right, here we go. Chapter 50. You know what? I scrolled down a little bit to where, oh yeah, it's not a PDF. All right, chapter 50, just so you know where we are. Oops, right here, chapter 50 of Tanya at the top. We scroll down, that's all commentary. And here we go. You know when it's not commentary, when you see the Hebrew across from it, you know that that's actual translation. The translation is in the bold text, and kind of the transitional wording is in the unbolded text. Let's begin. All the forms and levels of love mentioned above, right? Over the last several paragraphs, we've talked a lot about love. Sorry, did I say paragraphs? I meant chapters. All of the previous several chapters have talked about different forms of love. But he says the common denominator is that all of these types of love that were mentioned up until now are derived from the right side, from the level of Kohen. For a Kohen is called a man of kindness, meaning ish chesed, man of kindness, meaning that his form of serving God comes under the category of chesed. Now, let me explain that a little bit. In Kabbalah, so the way we depict the sfirot, the energies and the emotional energies, is by talking about them as right, left, and center. So on the right side is chesed, which is kindness. The left side is gvura, which is severity. So look what he says here. And I'm going to use the terminology that we've learned now thus far in the first 30 minutes or so of this session. Water love, silver love, that lower level of love, or whatever, that first level of love, which is about me wanting to feel God's closeness. I want to feel God's presence in my life. I want that closeness. That is a form of chesed. Think about what chesed is, right? In Hebrew, I'm highlighting it right there, chesed. What is chesed? Chesed is kindness. It's love. It's extending one's hand to help someone else out. It's the human touch from one to the other. Chesed is a symbol of closeness. It's about getting close. It's about an embrace. It's loving kindness, right? So there's that connection between two, where two individuals are connecting. That all of that beautifully captures the first type of love. The first type of love is me wanting to become close with God, me reaching out, if you will, to God. It's me bringing God into my life. All of that is level one love. Water love, silver love, right side love, Kohen love. All of these terms are synonymous. Water, silver, right side, and Kohen are all symbols in Kabbalah of the same dynamic. A love that's about closeness. They are called, these types of love, these dimensions of love are called, sorry, went too far on the scroll, Kesef HaKadashim. Kesef HaKadashim. In the Hebrew, it literally means holy money, but that's not what it means here. Kesef HaKadashim means, like I told you before, kesef is silver, money, silver, but silver. Kesef also means a yearning or a longing, a desire, Kadashim is holy. So he's translating here Kesef HaKadashim, not as holy money or holy silver used for a higher purpose. No. We're not talking about money. It's a longing, right? In the parentheses, a longing for holy things. So the first type of love, water, silver. This is silver, right? Water, Kesef. Right side Kohen is a longing to connect with holiness. As in the words from Psalms, right? Oh, I'm sorry. This is from Genesis. Oh, even better. Nichsof Nichsafta. This is from Genesis. It says, you sorely longed for your father's home. You sorely longed for your father's home. Longing, desiring, wanting to connect or reconnect is kesef. Let's continue. All of that is level 1. There is, however, as I told you before, another level of love which excels. In other words, it exceeds or transcends all these aforementioned levels, just as gold is superior to silver. You see what he just did there? Yeah. So this higher or this second level of love excels or is more powerful than the first type of love. And it's called gold. Just as gold is superior to silver, so is this love superior to the other love. What is this love? He explains. This is a love like glowing coals of, you guessed it, fire. Listen, everything I told you before, water, fire, silver, gold, it's all from here. So that it should be familiar as we're learning it inside. So this second level love, this higher level love, is like the glowing coals of fire, a burning love, unlike the aforementioned forms of love, which are like water. For the soul is drawn with a yearning toward God, like water which flows and is attracted in a certain direction. Let's skip the parentheses. This love, the second love, on the other hand, is not about connecting with God, but a totally different quality. It's about undoing oneself and becoming and going back to source. It's not about connecting with God. This love is a totally different quality, that of glowing coals of fire. And again, you could see this in fire. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I explained this before. Let me stop sharing for a moment and just give you the fire symbolism. What does fire do when you attach it to anything? It burns it up, and it burns up everything until there's nothing left to burn up. And then what happens? The fire goes out, which essentially means that fire from the beginning is trying to undo its own existence. But if something's in the way, it has to undo that first before it undoes itself. Are you with me on what fire wants to do? Fire wants to revert everything back into source code, wants to annul all tangible reality. So if you attach fire to a piece of paper, the fire is going to undo the piece of paper and then undo itself. Fire is the unraveling, right? With a capital T and a capital U. Sounds like a movie, right? Or a book, The Unraveling. That's what fire is. It is the great unraveling of self and of everything else. The second type of love is an unraveling. And you know what? Unraveling sounds a little bit chaotic. This love is chaotic. It's chaotic from a place of being centered and settled and living. This is the opposite of that. This is unraveling. Unraveling self to merge with God. I am withholding judgment whether that's a good thing or not a good thing. This is just a thing. Now, it's a dangerous thing, just like fire is dangerous because it can unravel everything, right, and undo everything. This is dangerous. And therefore, as we'll see a little bit later on in this chapter, it requires a counterbalance to help maintain a healthy focus. Alex, you want to say something? Don't forget to unmute.
Yeah, Rabbi. I gather that the fire love is very unusual, would you say, in the spectrum comparing
extremely unusual, extremely unusual.
Can you give us a feeling of how unusual is, I mean, that may be?
I mean, for it to go all the way to the point of undoing the soul, yeah, extremely unusual. I mean, we have rare instances. We have like Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, as I mentioned. And there are cases, who am I to be familiar with all these things? But, you know, with every, case or instance. But it's certainly a thing that's happened before that's gone all the way. But as we'll see in this chapter, the ideal is to get close, and then to come back
Yes.
and to integrate, which again, I don't want to get too far ahead because that's where we're headed. Right now, we're trying to draw the contrast in the pure expression of love. So there's a love that says, come, let's embrace. That's level one love. That's water love. That's silver love. That's right side love, Kohen love. Kohen love. All of that is the first level love. The second level of love is not come and let's and let's hang out with each other. It's I want to unravel self, to be spun back into source.
Just to follow that up one little bit further, I can imagine that a tzaddik may struggle while they're on this plane because their entire soul is connected, and there must be a degree of awareness of the longing, the lovesickness to return to source while
Correct.
they're on this plane, and yet they don't.
Correct.
Can
Correct.
you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can imagine for a tzaddik who's more attuned to this higher level of love, right? Which we haven't fully developed, but we're starting to develop. So the struggle of existence is completely the opposite of what the rest of us would be struggling with. Like we struggle with, bringing God even a little bit into our lives because, we're focused primarily on us, on ourselves, and what we need and our existence and survival. That, it's a good day when God's a little bit in. The tzaddik has the opposite struggle. The tzaddik completely identifies with source and has an existential sense of unraveling self. In other words, existentially does not want to exist. And thus the struggle is the other way, to keep oneself in existence, as opposed to us, who the idea of connecting with something higher is for the most part a bit foreign. And I don't mean to stack the deck too difficult against it, but it comes with struggle. It's not an easy thing, and it requires mindfulness and focus. But for the tzaddik, it's the opposite. It requires mindfulness and focus to stay plugged in, if you will, right? So the struggle is the other way. I guess either way, there's a tension. The question is, where's the starting point, and what's the counterbalance? But yeah, excellent points. All right, so let's jump back in, because I think as we go through it, it's going to be even more clarified and more poignant. So take a look. I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, so we established what the first level of love is. It's water. It's right side, which is chesed, and it's the Kohen. Good. The second love, which is like coals of fire, he says, this love derives from the level of higher gevurot. This is left side, not right side love. Gevura is on the left side. It's the higher gevurot of the higher bina. Bina is also on the left side, right? Chachma, bina, chesed, gevura. So bina and gevura are lined up on the left side. So he says, this is the level of higher gevurot. Lower gevura might manifest itself as anger or rage or something like that, a lower volatility. But higher gevurot is spiritual volatility, or higher volatility of the soul, where the volatility is that the soul wants to unravel itself. That's unsettling, right? That's volatility. Gevura is volatility, but it's higher volatility because it's volatility that is trained toward source and toward God. Let's see. Elon greatly. Yes, exactly, Mark. Yes. Good. Let's continue. In other words, the source of this love is from the level of Gvura and Bina. I don't want to focus on Bina right now, but I want to keep with the Chesed and Gvura. Chesed is the connection. Gvura is the unsettled, volatility of unraveling self. Now, here we go. We just said, actually, we're going to get into Bina here, right? The higher Gvura is connected with higher Bina, and Bina is connected with meditation. So he's going to talk about meditation now. Where does this love come from? Where does it come from? It comes from meditation. The arousal of this love being this higher fire, gold love, Gvura love, comes about through meditation, Bina, on the greatness of the Infinite One. before whom all is considered as absolute nothingness. So the more we meditate on the greatness of the infinite one, specifically in the fact that all are considered absolute nothingness relative to God, the more meaningless self-identity becomes. Do you understand does what I just say make sense? The more one focuses on the greatness of God, the infinite one, and the more one considers as absolute nothingness the notion of self, that leads, perhaps it could lead to the desire to undo self, to unravel self, and revert back to the infinite, right? So it's after this meditation, and I'm sure a lot of work, then what happens next? The soul becomes inflamed and flares up, right? Again, we're getting fire terminology here. There's an inflaming of the soul and a flaring up toward the precious splendor of his greatness in order to gaze upon the glory of the King. This is the content of this love. So what is the nature of the love? It's not to bring God and integrate God into my life. It's not to bring God to earth. It's not to make the world a more holy place. That is not the intention. And that's not the meaning of this love. This love is when we focus. It starts with meditation with Bina, and then it leads to Gvura. Higher Bina, higher Gvura. It starts with meditation on the greatness of the Ein Sof, of the infinite, and the fact that nothing else really matters. Everything is really nothing, which then drives and inflames this desire to gaze upon the glory of the King. You know what that means? That means to merge back. Doesn't mean just to look from a distance. Oh, nice looking at you, God. That's not what that means. Gaze upon the glory of the King. Gaze upon the glory of the King means get so close that we then merge. It is like, and here we go, take a look at this physical analogy. It is like glowing fiery coals of a mighty flame, which surges upward, a flame that surges upward, and not a love which is drawn towards some object, but one which ascends with the burning fire of Kilot HaNefesh. That's what I mentioned before. That's the phrase that I mentioned, the expiration of the soul, when the soul jumps out of the body and unravels and undoes its own existence and becomes back once again part of Source. That is the burning fire of Kilot HaNefesh that is born of this meditation. And that's why it's called fire, just like a fire that surges upward. Fire by nature surges upward. And as I said before, burns its own tether. You try to tie a ball and chain around the foot of a flame, it's going to burn it up, and then it's going to undo itself. So this is the nature of this love. It surges upward. It destroys anything holding it back in order to gaze upon the glory of the King, to fully merge back with Source. And it strives. This is, again, the analogy of fire. Fire strives to be parted from the wick and wood on which it has taken hold. So when you take fire, or you force fire into existence by striking it into existence, think about how fire is created. Fire is created through force, because fire never wants to be manifest. Fire is happy sitting in the source. But no, you had to bring fire into the world through force. You said, nope, I'm summoning you, fire, in a manifest way. Fire, appear. So fire has to listen. But then you know what it does? It burns everything up, and then it disappears again. Because fire never wanted to be here. And even when it's here, it's volatile, and it wishes to unravel, and then it does unravel, and then it undoes itself. Fire strives to be parted. I'm going to do this line again. To be parted from the wick and the wood on which it has taken hold. That is what fire wants to. It never wanted to be here. It never asked to be here. You had to be the chacham. You had to be the wise guy that summoned it forth with your powers of Flintstones or whatever it is. Now, all right, enjoy it while it lasts, but soon it's going to be gone. This results from the predominance. Let me explain. How does the soul have the nature to undo itself? This is from the fact that there's a predominance of the element of divine fire that is in the divine soul. In other words, the divine soul has a fiery nature an eish Eloki, a divine fire inside the soul. And because it has the element of fire, therefore it has a tendency toward undoing itself. The soul also has the water element, which seeks a lower connection, a settled connection. I'm not going anywhere, but I want to share my life with you, God. That's the water love. Water love is, I'm here. God, I love you. Let's hang out together. I want to bring you into my life, and I want to get closer to you in my life. So I'm not undoing myself. I just want to be closer. That's water. We have water in our soul. I don't mean like, call the plumber, but there's the element of waters in our soul, the element of fires in our soul. And the fire in our soul drives the soul to wish to undo itself. From this fire element in the soul comes to a thirst. Just as in the physical domain, one becomes thirsty when the element of fire predominates, so it is in the spiritual domain too. The ascendancy of the divine soul's element of fire creates a thirst within the soul, as it is written, Tzama lecha nafshi. One of the Negunim, one of the songs the Rebbe taught us, was on these words. Tzama lecha nafshi. My soul thirsts. Tzama means thirst. It thirsts for you. What's the example? What does thirst mean? Thirst means, imagine you're in a parched desert, right? A fiery desert, and there's no water around, and you're parched, and you're dying of thirst, God forbid, not you, but someone is dying of thirst. That yearning for water, all I want is water, is the same level of thirst that my soul has for you. King David writes, my soul thirsts for you. It just wants to be part of you. And then it reaches the level of love sickness, where the soul is sick with the love of God, just as an unquenched physical thirst brings onto a state of sickness. Think about the person who's thirsty and can't find water, eventually becomes delirious in the desert, right? Hallucinations, etc. There's a love sickness that happens when the soul yearns for God and can't fully undo itself. And then it comes, so there's a pattern here. It starts with the meditation, which arouses the fire, which brings about a thirst, which brings about a love sickness, and then finally it comes to a virtual expiring of the soul, kolot hanefesh, where the soul jumps out, as it is written, and my soul expires. And take a look at what it says here in the note, in kind of like the note. If not for the consequent contrary sensation of retreat and restraining oneself, as will be explained further, the soul at this point would literally expire. In other words, if immediately we don't balance this thirst, love sickness, kolot hanefesh, with a rebound, with a grounding, it could go all the way. Now, but before we get to the balance, let's talk about a few more pieces. From here, from the level of the higher Gvura, the higher Bina, is derived the source of the divine service of the Levites below in this world. In other words, the Kohen, we said before, the Kohen is Chesed, which is the silver, which is the water, which is the lower level of love. The Levi, the Levite, right? The Levite is Gvura, is the left side, is the gold, and it's the fire. It's the higher level of love. And that's reflected in the service of the Levites. The Levites would sing, and the idea of singing, again, is that the sound is soaring up and above, emerging, melding with the spiritual realities, symbolic of the idea of this yearning of the soul. He says parenthetically, in the future, when Mashiach comes, when the world will be elevated, the Levites will be Kohanim. So in other words, the full impact, the full beauty of that experience will be revealed when Mashiach comes, when Levites will be the Kohanim. Mark, if you're still here, and you are still here, look at that. You're getting an upgrade. So, right, Mark is a Levite. So, Steve, are you also a Levite? Steve, are you a Levi? No?
No, I'm a Kohen.
Oh, you're a Kohen. Look at you. There you
Yeah.
go. All right. So listen, I'm not getting in the middle of this stuff, right? I'm just reporting what it says. So Kohanim, right? Kohanim nowadays are above Levium, above the Levites. So when Mashiach comes, there may be a little bit of I don't know if it's reversing, but the Levites will be elevated to the status of Kohanim. So what that means is that although predominantly today the love that we try to have for God is the water love, ultimately the higher form of love is that fire love that is likened to the Levites. And he quotes here from the Arizal, as our master, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, blessed memory, commented on the verse, but the Kohanim, the Levites, that the Levites of today will become the Kohanim of the future. That sounds literally like the tagline of an academic website, you know, give your children good education because the Levites of today will become the Kohanim of the future. Something, something, something like that. Anyway, I digress. So what's the point? That, again, there's a bunch of different symbolisms, but they all reflect one of two dynamics: lower love, higher love. The lower level of love, let's go through all the symbols. Water, silver, right side, chesed, kohen. I think I covered everything. And the higher level of love, which is about undoing self, is related to the following symbols: fire, gold, left side, Gevura, Bina, Levites. I think that's it. I think I got all the themes. So it's right side, left side, or whatever. Two different realities, two different types of love. Now, how is this reflected with music? Sorry, with the Levites. So now he gets into it, as I mentioned before. The Levites service of God in the temple, in the holy temple of old. The Levite service of God was to raise their voice in melody and thanksgiving with song and music, tunefulness. Is that a word? Tunefulness, maybe, and harmony. Could be. It sounds okay, right? Especially in yeshiva terminology, tunefulness sounds very apropos, right? So the Levites were all about music, right? They did voice, they played instruments. So the melody, thanksgiving, song, music, tunefulness, and harmony. Their music, I want to skip that. Their music progressed in a manner of, this is key, advance and retreat, right? I wish I knew music better. I mean, I listen to music, but I don't know the science of music. I don't know how to read music, but I'm sure if for anyone that knows how to read music, they could explain in musical terms what this idea of ratzah and shuv is, this advance and retreat, this idea of the rising and the falling of the melody, and how that's what makes music beautiful. What makes it great is not just one key, one note, played continuously. That's not music. There's something about the scales and the ups and the downs of the music that make it amazing. So this is the second type of love, the Levite love, the left side love, the gold love, the transcendent love, the undoing self love. That's the advance. That's the running, right? Ratzo is literally running and Shov is returning. So it's a lot. It's running, but then the safety hatch is coming back. This echoed their form of serving God, the Levites' form of serving God. What was that? The headlong advance toward Klot HaNefesh, right? Barreling in to undoing self. I'm losing my own reality. I'm getting close to source, ready to merge with the source code. But then at the last minute, the restraint, retreat, and return from that point, like music that takes you, lifts you up and swells and then comes back down with I don't know where the crescendo comes in, if that's the high or when it comes back down, but like waves that swell and crash, the music swells and comes back, and there's beauty in both. There's music when it goes up, and there's beauty when it goes down. It's beautiful all around. It's part of the magic and dynamic and life blood of that composition, of that piece. And the same thing is true when it comes to the second love. The first love is not volatile. The first love, you don't have to have the fallback, because You're just connecting. You're holding hands with God. God, I want to walk on this path of life with you. I want to bring you into my life. Perfect. You're good to go. That's out of the box, ready to go. The second love is volatile. The second love is dangerous. Proceed with caution. If you get too close, you might go too far. You might fall off the edge of the cliff. So you got to go close, but then go back, pull back. The ratzo, the shuv, the yearning and the integration, the advance and retreat, the running and returning. That's the safety hatch with this type of love. Such is the nature of this intense love, like a flame that flashes out of the bazak. What is the bazak? It is the crucible of refining gold. Flames flash, and then they withdraw. Like the flame that flashed out of the bazak is mentioned in the Gemara Chagiga. Now look what he says. Ooh, how close are we to the end? Not close enough. Not close enough. We're not going to finish tonight. I'm going to look to close it out. So let me see. Maybe we'll do one more line. One more line. It is impossible to explain the subject clearly in writing. After all this, he says, how could you take such subtle ideas and put them in wording? I mean, when we talk about it, at least we can use analogies and emotion and, but on a page, it's much harder to convey it. Yet he says every person who, with a feeling heart, who is understanding and intelligent in grasping the subject and delves deeply to attach his mind and understanding to God, will find the goodness and light concealed within his intelligent soul, each according to his capacity. In other words, it's very difficult to explain the second level of love, yet we can reach it not necessarily in a academic way, but in an experiential way. So we're going to close it out right now, right here. So we're kind of in middle of chapter 50. So what did we talk about tonight? Well, we've been very focused, I think, very focused on the subject at hand, which is really to explain two types of love, two overarching categories of love: water love and fire love. Water love is a settled love. Water love is, it's a loving love. It's a loving love. It's a love of, I want to be together with you. I want to be close with you. I want to share my life with you, God. It's God. I don't want to just live my own life, on my own. I want you part of my life. Come into my life, into my home, into my experiences. I want to share this with you. That's the first type of love. The second type of love is, I no longer want to be, right? I don't want to be outside of you. I want to just undo myself and merge back with the source, with the original code of existence. That's it. That's the second love. It's a lofty love. It's a higher love. It's a gold love. It's a passionate love. It's a fiery love. It may sound unattainable. So maybe for many, it's an unattainable love. But one thing we know is that if a person does get there, then in order to remain around, you have to immediately couple it with the shuv, with the return, with the integration. And in the second half of chapter 50, which we'll do next week, please God, the second half of this chapter, we'll talk about what that looks like. How that return, when we're so close to the edge that we're peering out over the abyss and we're looking into, crossing over and watching all of our molecules split and go back into the original code, go back to source. When we're about to launch headfirst into that unraveling, how do we pull back? Right? What is that process of pulling back? And that we'll explore amongst other things in the second half of chapter 50. All right, what's some practical takeaways that we can have? I think we can try to apply both in our lives. Let's create space in our lives for God. And also from time to time, think a little bit outside of ourselves. Maybe not to this extent, but think a little bit less of self and be okay with abandoning or unraveling self a little bit, at least to let go of the ego from time to time. All right, that is perhaps the takeaway, one takeaway from tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. And I look forward to seeing you next week for Tanya. Think different. Any questions or comments? Jump right in.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Actually, it's something I texted too. does God really want that? Does he want us to undo ourselves?
Oh, now you're talking. That's going to come up next week. The subsequent meditation is, I might want to undo myself, but what does God want? God clearly made me into this separate existence. So should I be smarter than God? Right? Like, but by the way, that's also not a foolproof meditation, because one could argue, yes, that's exactly what God created this so that you and I should undo it. One could argue that. I'm not saying that is correct, but one could theoretically say, right? It's like you give someone a puzzle to solve, not to get stuck in, right? God gives us a puzzle and says, solve it, right? God gives you a knot to unravel it. So one could argue that's what this is. It's about God gives us a self-awareness knot, and our job is to undo it. But ultimately, that's not what it is. We still have a purpose as long as we have the capacity, and therefore, that's the subsequent meditation of, wait, I'm here for a reason. Let me not jump ship and undo self. In other words, the reason is not to undo self. There's a reason that's a higher purpose for the world, for the betterment of the world, which allows us to integrate back into our mission. Is there value in the escape? If any way we're going to come back, right? There is. Because it gives us a different look. When we have those moments of feeling like we want to undo and feeling, sensing source, which is much greater than self, that allows us, when we do come back, right, subsequently into an integrated modality, it allows us to not take things so seriously, right? It's like, wait a second, I'm going to really be concerned that a person stepped in front of me in line. Is that really right? If we're talking about undoing self and then somebody steps in front of me in line, 1-0 got in the way of another nothing, right? So like one there's no, so it is beneficial. It is beneficial in that when we do come back, it's with a different perspective. Anyway, so that's just a little bit. Again, we're going to elaborate on this next week. That's really all about that's a lot of what we're going to do next week, but that's a little bit of a teaser on that. Other questions, comments? Jody, it's great to have you here. Welcome. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. I did.
Pleasure. Of course. Alex, Lisa, Sandrine, Steve, David, and Mark. It's great to see you all. Have a wonderful evening. Shabbat Shalom. And don't forget, very important, don't forget, tonight is Rosh Chodesh. Put on the dancing shoes, whether literally or metaphorically, and make sure that you do everything that you can to be besimcha. It's not the easiest times that we find ourselves in, but Torah never said that its demands are easy, right? Torah says now it's Adar. Right now it's already Adar. It just started. Now you have to be besimcha. What do you mean? I'm not so happy. So who said it's going to be easy? Who said doing a mitzvah is easy? Got to be happy, right? It takes effort, even sometimes, to be happy. So let's put in the effort. And look, what's the worst that can happen? We're a little bit happier. It's fantastic, right? Even if we are happy, to be happier, it's gewaltig. All right. Yada da 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 da, hey, yada da 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 da. The simcha. All right, we'll see you all soon. Have a good Shabbos and
Shalom.
Chodesh Tov. Take care, everybody.
Good.
Shabbat
Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov.